They said she was the holiest woman in Pinehill, but no one saw her claws at night. In Pinehill, people learned to fear the darkness. They would go to bed with smooth, unmarked skin, believing they were safe behind locked doors and heavy shutters. But in the morning, they would wake with burning, bleeding scratches crisscrossing their bodies, deep, raw claw marks that throbbed for days. No matter what ointment they used, the wounds festered. That was Eliza's curse. By day, however, no one suspected her dark side. Eliza was the model of piety, a saint in every sense of the word. She was the village's teacher, revered for her wisdom and kindness. Her morning prayers were always heard in St. Mary's Church, where she would arrive before dawn to sweep the floors and arrange the altar. Her voice, soft and melodic, carried through the halls as she hummed hymns. Eliza was more than just a teacher. She was the heart of the village. She helped anyone in need, always with a smile, always offering solace. The elderly would speak of her like an angel sent from heaven, and the children adored her. She was the one who knew everyone's name, who prayed over their sick, and who helped them find their way. The villagers believed she was perfect, but in the dead of night, they learned to fear what they couldn't see. As Eliza's influence grew, so did the town's trust in her. No one could imagine Pinehill without her. She was at the center of every important decision, whether it was related to church matters or the well-being of the village. The priest often consulted her before taking any action, and the elders regularly sought her advice on matters concerning the town's future. She was appointed the church's treasurer, entrusted with all the donations that came in. Every Sunday, after the collection, Eliza would count the offerings carefully, with a methodical precision that only added to her image of unshakable integrity. Her ledger was always neat, the numbers always matching perfectly, and yet there was an eerie tranquility about it all. The townsfolk never questioned her. Her grace, her poise, her humility, it was as if she had been made to be the town's perfect figurehead. When the annual award for Mother of the Year was discussed, her name was the first to be mentioned. Who else could it be? She was the heart of Pinehill, the one who prayed for them, who served them, and who gave so selflessly. The day she received the title was met with celebrations, songs, dances, and cheers filled the streets. Eliza knelt humbly as the mayor placed the honor around her neck. The crowd sang her praises, and no one noticed the cold flicker of malice hidden in her eyes. Eliza's life seemed perfect. Her children, though quiet, were well behaved, always following her example of discipline and faith. She often hosted prayer meetings at her home, gathering the women of the village to sing hymns and pray for the sick. Her house was always warm and welcoming, filled with the smell of fresh bread and the sound of soft conversation. Eliza would share stories of biblical wisdom, and her followers would hang on every word. She spoke with a voice so gentle, so full of compassion, that even the most hardened hearts softened in her presence. Yet, as much as she gave to the community, something felt off to a few who had begun to notice oddities. A few villagers who had once crossed her path or refused her demands began to fall ill in strange ways. The symptoms were unlike anything the local doctor had seen. Their limbs would swell, their skin would bruise unnaturally, and the pain would be unbearable, leaving them bedridden for days. The worst part was that no amount of medicine seemed to help, and the wounds, though treated, never fully healed. The village was beginning to notice a pattern. Those who challenged Eliza in any way seemed to be cursed, but no one dared speak it aloud. They were too afraid. Eliza's saintly demeanor never wavered. Every Sunday, she would stand before the congregation, Bible in hand, and speak of forgiveness and love. But the whispers started. Quietly, they wondered if there was more to Eliza than what they saw. When the new priest arrived, he too was captivated by Eliza's charm. He was a young, idealistic man, new to the ways of Pinehill, and Eliza welcomed him with open arms. She was the first to greet him at the church door, Bible pressed tightly to her chest. Her smile was as warm as the sun, and her voice, soft and inviting, was a balm to his tired soul after a long journey. She provided him with food, serving him the finest meals, made with ingredients that only she seemed to know about. Eliza became his closest confidant, always at his side, offering her wisdom and guidance. But it didn't take long for the new priest to notice something unsettling. He began to hear stories of villagers who were suddenly falling ill or disappearing under strange circumstances. Though Eliza never seemed to be involved, he began to connect the dots. But every time he tried to voice his suspicions, something stopped him: Eliza's kindness, her unwavering faith, her perfect devotion to God. She was the saint that Pinehill needed, and no one could dare challenge her. Her influence was like a shadow impossible to escape. The priest was trapped in a web of admiration and doubt, unsure whether to trust his instincts or the woman who seemed to embody everything good in the world. But the truth, as Eliza knew, had a way of staying hidden in the dark. And it was only in the night, when the moon was high, that her true self came to life. At night, Pinehill's air grew thick with an eerie stillness. The crickets' chirps became faint whispers, and the breeze carried a chill that seemed to linger far longer than it should. The town would fall into a deep slumber, believing they were safe behind their wooden shutters and locked doors. But Eliza had other plans. By night, she would shed her saintly skin. The Bible that had been pressed so tightly to her chest during the day was abandoned in the corner of her room. She closed her eyes, and that was when the change began. Her body twisted in unnatural ways, her bones cracked, her skin stretched, and black fur began to sprout across her flesh. It wasn't just her appearance that changed. Her soul, too, took on a dark form, consumed by a hunger she could never fully satiate. When the transformation was complete, she wasn't a woman anymore. She was something else entirely: a black cat, sleek and silent, with eyes that burned like embers. Her movements were swift, calculated, and silent as she slunk through the shadows of Pinehill. She would move between the sleeping houses like a predator, stalking those who had wronged her in any way, no matter how small the transgression. Once she had chosen her victim, Eliza would slip into their homes, unnoticed, as though the night itself was afraid to reveal her presence. She was as quiet as the wind, her footsteps barely making a sound. Her claws gleamed in the moonlight as she crept closer to the bed where her victim lay. The air was thick with the stench of fear as Eliza perched herself at the foot of their bed, watching their chests rise and fall with peaceful, unsuspecting breaths. She reveled in their vulnerability, in their complete ignorance of the danger. Lurking in the shadows, her tail flicked once, then again. And that was when she struck. Her claws tore into their flesh slowly, deliberately, as if savoring every moment. The wounds were deep and jagged, marked with precision. Eliza fed on their terror, drawing strength from the pain she inflicted. Sometimes she would lick the blood from the cuts, savoring the metallic taste, and other times she simply let it drip onto the sheets, leaving a trail of destruction in her wake. But no matter what she did, she always left them alive. It was important. She wanted them to wake the next day, screaming in agony, to show the village what happened to those who crossed her. As Eliza moved through the village, she was invisible, as silent as the darkness itself. No one heard the creak of doors or the rustle of curtains as she moved from house to house. The victims never saw her coming, and when she left, it was as though she had never been there. By the time dawn arrived, Eliza was back in her room, cleaning her claws, washing the blood away. The transformation reversed itself as quickly as it had begun. Her fur sank beneath her skin, her claws retracted, and her eyes returned to their soft, natural hue. She would then pick up her Bible, hold it tightly against her chest, and pray. The words would tremble in her voice, and she would cry real tears, asking for forgiveness for the actions she had committed. She would tell herself that she was doing the work of God, that she was punishing the wicked and keeping the village pure. She had convinced herself of her righteousness. And yet, deep inside, she knew the truth. Her actions were no longer about justice. They were about power, about control. The morning after each attack, the villagers would wake to the same horror. They would find the deep, raw claw marks on their bodies, the bleeding wounds that would never fully heal. They couldn't explain it. No one could. But the stories began to spread. Whispers and hushed voices. People started to notice that those who had wronged Eliza in any way seemed to be the ones who suffered the most. The doctor was baffled. The wounds were unlike anything he had ever seen. He treated them as best as he could, but the pain never subsided, and the marks never faded. Some villagers tried to ignore the connection, telling themselves it was some strange illness, a sickness that would pass. But the fear was building. And though no one dared to speak of it directly, the villagers knew. They had learned to fear the dark. They had learned that there were consequences to crossing Eliza, the saint by day and the devil by night. As the days passed, the villagers began to feel a growing unease, but no one dared speak of it openly. The attacks, though they never spoke of them directly, had become the town's darkest secret. Eliza remained as saintly as ever, always at the front of the church, leading prayers with a voice so gentle, it seemed to melt the hearts of all who heard her. She continued her work with flawless dedication, but behind her calm exterior, something darker was stirring. Her once pure intentions were slipping away, like sand through her fingers, as she fed off the pain and terror she caused each night. She justified her actions as necessary for cleansing the village. But deep inside, Eliza could feel herself slipping further into a twisted version of righteousness. She knew what she had become, yet she couldn't stop herself. The need for control, the satisfaction from the fear she inflicted, had become an addiction. That night, as she read from her Bible before bed, Eliza realized something. The village was on the brink of discovering her secret. And when they did, they would never see her the same way again. But it would be too late by then. The whispers about Eliza grew louder, and the young priest, Father Gabriel, began to feel a growing suspicion about the strange occurrences that plagued Pinehill. He noticed the pattern, the victims, always those who had crossed Eliza or refused her demands. He spent nights in prayer, trying to convince himself it was just a coincidence. But deep down, he knew there was something sinister at play. His faith had been shaken. The more he watched Eliza, the more he couldn't shake the feeling that she was involved in these strange events. One evening, while Eliza was busy preparing for the evening prayer meeting, Father Gabriel decided to follow her. He had to know the truth. He waited until the villagers had gone to bed, and then he slipped into the shadows, his heart pounding in his chest. Eliza was in her room, her back to him, reading from her Bible. But as Father Gabriel watched, the room seemed to shift. Her body twisted in unnatural ways, her bones cracking and reshaping. She let out a soft hiss, and before his eyes, she transformed into a black cat. He gasped, his hand covering his mouth in shock. This was no longer just suspicion. Eliza wasn't human at all. She was something far darker. Father Gabriel stumbled back, his mind racing. His first instinct was to run, but his legs refused to move. His eyes were fixed on the creature in front of him, the red glow of its eyes piercing through the darkness. The black cat moved silently toward the door, pausing as if it sensed his presence. Then, without warning, it vanished into the shadows. Father Gabriel waited a beat before he dared to move. His heart hammered in his chest as he crept toward Eliza's room. The door creaked open slowly, and what he saw inside made his stomach turn. The Bible Eliza had been holding earlier lay discarded on the floor, forgotten in the wake of her transformation. The room was now empty, save for the lingering scent of the cat. His mind raced, he couldn't believe it. Eliza, the woman he had come to admire, was a monster. But there was no time to dwell on it. He needed to act, to expose her before she did any more damage. But where could he turn? The villagers would never believe him, and if he spoke up, he too would become one of her victims. The realization hit him hard. He was trapped in this nightmare. No one was safe. No one except Eliza, who was weaving her web tighter every night. The next morning, Eliza was her usual self, sweet, unassuming, and full of grace. The priest was gone. He had left the church early, mumbling something about a sudden illness. Eliza smiled to herself as she prepared for the Sunday service already, knowing that her secret was safe for now. But she could feel the change in the air. Father Gabriel had seen too much, and it was only a matter of time before he would come for her. She had to act quickly. That night, she would confront him. Not as the woman he admired, but as the creature she truly was. The villagers remained oblivious, unaware of the impending storm. But Eliza was ready. She had kept her secret for so long, but now the priest was a threat she could no longer ignore. The darkness had found its way into the village, and it was only a matter of time before it would all come crashing down. Eliza's transformation would no longer be just a secret tonight. It would be a reckoning. That night, Father Gabriel stood at the church's doorstep, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had witnessed. The priest's thoughts were consumed by Eliza, by the horrors he had seen. How had she hidden this side of herself for so long? The small, peaceful village had trusted her completely, and now that trust was shattered. He had to do something. But what? Who would believe him if he spoke of what he saw? The villagers adored her, and they would dismiss his words as madness. In the quiet of the night, Father Gabriel made up his mind he would confront her. He couldn't let her continue to prey on Pinehill's people. As he walked through the darkened streets, his footsteps echoed like a drumbeat in the silence. He reached Eliza's house and stood outside for a moment, gathering his courage. The air was thick, almost oppressive. Tonight, the truth would be revealed, and one way or another, everything would change. He could hear the wind rustling through the trees as he knocked on the door. Eliza answered the door, her smile as warm as it had always been. She looked perfect, as if nothing had changed, but Father Gabriel could see through the mask. Her eyes, those eyes held something darker, something that sent a shiver down his spine. "Father Gabriel," she said in a soft, melodic voice, as if she had been expecting him. "What brings you here at such an hour?" He swallowed hard, trying to steady his breathing. "I need to speak with you," he said, his voice shaky. Eliza stepped aside, allowing him to enter. As he walked into the house, he could feel her gaze on him, like a weight pressing down on his chest. The room was still, and the air felt heavy with tension. "I've seen you, Eliza," he began, his voice firm now, "and I know what you are." Eliza's smile faltered just for a second, before she regained her composure. "What are you talking about, Father?" she asked innocently. But Father Gabriel wasn't fooled. "I saw you last night," he said. "I saw you transform. I saw the creature you become." Eliza's expression changed instantly, her lips curling into a sly, knowing smile. For the first time, Father Gabriel saw the true Eliza, the one who had been hiding beneath the mask of piety for so long. "You shouldn't have come here tonight, Father," she said, her voice now laced with venom. "You've seen too much." The room grew colder, the shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls. Father Gabriel felt his pulse quicken as Eliza's form began to shift. Her eyes glowed red, and her body twisted, contorted as it began to shrink and change. The transformation was excruciating to watch, her bones cracking, her skin shifting, fur sprouting as she became the black cat he had seen in his nightmares. The creature hissed, its claws gleaming in the dim light. "I tried to warn you, Father." Eliza's voice echoed from the cat's mouth, now dripping with malice. "But you refused to listen." Father Gabriel stepped back, his heart racing. He had never seen anything like this before. The holy woman he had admired was now a monstrous, bloodthirsty creature. He tried to speak, to call for help, but no words came. Eliza, in her cat form, moved with lightning speed, darting toward him. She slashed at his face with one of her sharp claws, leaving a deep gash that burned with an unnatural heat. Father Gabriel cried out in pain as blood trickled down his cheek. The cat circled him, watching him with its fiery eyes. "You think you can stop me, Father?" Eliza's voice dripped with amusement. "I've been doing this for far longer than you can imagine. No one can stop me, not even you." The priest, stunned and paralyzed by fear, fell to his knees. Clutching his bleeding face, he had never felt so helpless. Eliza was unstoppable, and now she had him right where she wanted him. But just as Eliza was about to strike the final blow, a sound broke the stillness of the night footsteps. Someone was outside. Someone was approaching. Eliza hesitated, turning her head toward the door. "It's too late, Father Gabriel," she hissed, her claws raised, ready to finish him. But the priest saw a glimmer of hope. "Help!" he tried to shout, but it was a weak, hoarse cry. The door to the house creaked open, and in the doorway stood a figure, a shadow in the dark. It was Martha, one of the village women who had been close to Eliza, but had grown suspicious of her over the years. Martha had heard the rumors, seen the signs, and followed Father Gabriel, hoping to uncover the truth. She gasped when she saw the creature Eliza had become, but she didn't back away. "Get away from him, Eliza," she cried, her voice trembling but strong. Eliza let out a low growl, but before she could move, Martha reached into her bag and pulled out a small bundle of herbs wrapped in cloth. She threw them at Eliza's feet, and the moment the herbs hit the ground, a strange, pungent smoke rose from them. Eliza recoiled, hissing in pain as the smoke burned her. The transformation began to unravel, her form flickering between the cat and the woman she had been. Eliza's body writhed in agony, her form shifting violently between the black cat and the woman she had once been. The smoke from the herbs Martha had thrown filled the room, swirling around Eliza like a cage. She howled in frustration, her glowing red eyes flickering as the curse that had controlled her began to loosen. Father Gabriel, still kneeling on the floor, watched in shock as Eliza struggled to regain control. Her clothes were torn, and the air in the room seemed to grow colder, heavier. Martha stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Eliza, her face hard with determination. "You've terrorized this village for long enough," Martha declared, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her heart. "The truth is out now. Your reign ends tonight." Eliza, her human form only half visible beneath the smoke, snarled, "You think this changes anything? You think you can stop me? You've only just begun to see the power I hold." Her voice trembled with rage, but there was an edge of fear in it now. Eliza had always been in control, but now, for the first time, she was losing her grip. Father Gabriel rose to his feet slowly, still shaken, but filled with a new resolve. He had seen enough to know that this was the moment to stop her. "No more hiding behind the mask of piety," he said, his voice stronger now. "The villagers deserve to know the truth about you. No more games, Eliza." The air in the room grew tense, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Eliza's eyes flashed with fury. She tried to move toward Father Gabriel, but the smoke from the herbs seemed to bind her, locking her in place. "You won't take this from me," she spat, her voice now dripping with venom. "You think you can expose me? Do you have any idea what I've done to keep this village safe? How many lives I've saved by my actions, by my choices?" Her voice rose, and for a moment, Father Gabriel felt the weight of her words. She wasn't just a monster. She believed she was doing what was best for Pinehill, even if it meant hurting others. But then he remembered the claw marks, the blood, the terror she had caused. She had twisted her intentions long ago, using her power to control the village and manipulate them all. "You've twisted their faith," he said softly. "You've used their trust to mask your darkness. You are a predator, not a protector." Eliza froze, her face contorting with rage and something else, something darker, a hint of realization. She had spent years deceiving everyone, including herself, convincing herself she was doing God's work. But now, in this moment, the truth could no longer be denied. Martha took a step forward, her eyes never leaving Eliza. The curse that binds you, Eliza, isn't just in your blood. It's in your heart. You've allowed it to consume you, to change who you are. Eliza's body trembled with a mix of anger and fear. I did what I had to do, she said, her voice cracking. I protected them. I kept them safe from the darkness. You don't understand. But Father Gabriel shook his head. No, Eliza, you've become the very thing you claim to fight against. You've created your own darkness. The black cat's form flickered again, and for a brief moment, Eliza's human face emerged from the shadows, her eyes filled with a deep, raw pain. I never wanted this, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I just wanted to be loved, to be needed, to matter. Father Gabriel's heart softened for a moment, and he stepped closer, but then Eliza's eyes turned cold again. You can't save me, she hissed. It's too late for that. And with that, she lunged forward, her claws extended, aiming for Father Gabriel's throat. But before she could strike, Martha threw a handful of the ashes from the dibby as medicine at her, and a blinding light filled the room. Eliza let out a scream of pain as the light engulfed her, her body contorting violently, and with one final heart-wrenching cry, she collapsed to the ground. The light faded, and the room fell silent. Eliza's body lay still on the floor, but there was no longer any sign of the dark power that had consumed her. The smoke cleared, and in its place lay Eliza, her form human once more, but broken. She was no longer the saint the village had known, nor the devil she had become. She was just a woman, vulnerable and lost. Father Gabriel knelt beside her, his heart heavy. You were lost, Eliza, he whispered, his voice full of sorrow. You didn't have to become this. Martha stepped forward, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and sadness. The village will know the truth now, she said quietly. They'll see who you really were. Father Gabriel nodded. It wasn't enough to undo the harm she had caused, but at least the village would no longer be in the dark. They would no longer be manipulated by a false saint. The sun began to rise, and as the first light filtered through the windows, Eliza's true nature was laid bare for all to see. The village would mourn her loss not just as a woman, but as the angel who had turned into a monster. And Pinehill would heal slowly but surely from the darkness she had brought. But as for Eliza, her journey had come to an end. She was no longer a saint nor a devil, just a broken soul, caught between the two. Thanks for watching till the end. If this story gave you goosebumps, give it a like and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment below and let me know what city or country you're tuning in from. I read everyone. Till then, take care, folks.